Before I get into the processes, I have to tell you a little bit about my community and why what we're doing, I feel, is different than anything else that has happened up to this date. Indianola, Mississippi is in the heart of the Mississippi Delta. A beautiful place, some of the most fertile ground in the United States. But when it was first cultivated into farmland, it was nothing but flooded swampland. To clear all that land, slave labor was used. Agriculture has always been a racially divided system, and especially so in the state of Mississippi. After the slave problems that were taking place, we also had, after that changed after the Civil War, then you got into the inequities of sharecropping. You may not have had an overseer that was over you as a slave, but you had an overseer who had control of your pocketbook. So it didn't really change that much at all, just by nomenclature. So that racial divisiveness continued on. Then we get into the Civil Rights Movement. And it changed slightly after that when the people actually had a vote to make a difference. And that vote was used very strongly and the voices were heard. But again, it still didn't change. That divisiveness still stayed in place. And it was more of a distrust at that point because at least a little bit of conversation was being taken place among the citizens. But conversations and hearing are two different things. So we had a lot of conversation, but nothing again was changing. And then we had separate but unequal school systems. And I'd have to say I'm a product of a separate but unequal school system. I went 11 and a half years to what was then the white public school of Indianola, Mississippi. And in Christmas break of 1969, when the federal legislation came through that was mandatory integration, my high school was dissolved. So when I left at Christmas break, there was no school to go back to. So I couldn't understand it. Even as a high school senior, I couldn't understand what was going on, why the big deal. Well, at that time, there was a private academy, a separatist academy that had been in place for about 5 years prior to that. And the white students, the white teachers, moved en masse to the private school, myself included. And I almost couldn't graduate because the private school didn't offer typing. And I was in the middle of a typing class, and I didn't think I was going to get that last hour of credit so I could graduate. And that was the only thing I was concerned with. But later in life, I realized the severity of that change. So after that 1970 event, again, the distrust rose again. It was an all-white school board, a white superintendent, but 100% African-American school system. The community that was being served had no input on what was going on for their children. Very similar to the program that we saw here today. A lot of talk, but no true communication. And I tell you all of this because the processes that we've been through this last year is completely different. When we had the boycotts, when we had voters registration through Freedom Summer of '64, all of those things got an uplifting of community involvement. But we fixed the wound of that time, but we never fixed the disease. So now, with this Well Community program, we are working on that disease. And it's more than just race relations, it's community relations, which in Mississippi strongly involves race relations. But our process has started off where we started looking at our community, the people involved. Who are the true leaders that are actually doing something in our community, both black and white? So we brought this group of leaders together, and I just wanted to mention, we're talking bank presidents of our two largest banking facilities in our community, lawyers, lawyer for the Sunflower County Board of Supervisors, a very active civil liberties type lawyer who in the 60s and 70s worked towards change in our community. School administrators, we have on our group the superintendent and the assistant superintendent of our newly formed consolidated school district. Hospital administrators, ministers from local churches. These were all people who work with the citizens of Indianola, both black and white, who command influence within our community, well respected. And not that they've never sat at the same table, which they've had, but again, a lot of yin-yang, a lot of talking, but nothing ever changed. So we might fix an incident at that time, but we didn't put the medicine to cure the disease. The well community is doing that. We've had some hard conversations and some words, but the process is that we had to create a shared vision, a shared purpose. So we started off with people talking about what they saw Indianola as today and what they wanted it to be in the future. We didn't talk about methods on how we're going to get there. We talked about, how do you see it? What do you think? And we tried to be silent, because one thing that David Gibbs told us is that everybody's vision is their vision. You can't tell them they see it wrong, because it's their vision. So we got a strong understanding that we all had to listen to each other's vision. So we listened to David. We worked through it. David constantly proved me wrong, that I would say that these all are strong, active leaders. They run busy lives. They run businesses. You're not going to get them to stay in a meeting for 2 hours, for 3 hours, for 4 hours. And constantly he proves me wrong, because they all keep showing up. They all want to make a difference. They want to come up with the right medicine to fix this disease that has plagued Indianola, the Mississippi Delta, Mississippi, and obviously throughout the United States. But we're going to fix our little area, and maybe we can show somebody how we did it and carry it forward. But through this process, we've worked on a shared purpose and a shared vision. And it was because of we're comparing each other's vision, again, not saying somebody's vision is wrong, because it is their vision, but getting an understanding that the way they see it is not exactly the same as you may see it. And we came up with blended visions that we could all adopt and embrace. We started out with 4 subject matters that we thought was community and influential, that could make a difference. Of course, race started out as the first part of conversation, but we quickly realized that that's not our only problem. Health was another one. And we brought in professionals from our community and from the surrounding area to tell us the national picture on health, or the national picture on race relations, to try to influence and teach us what we needed to do. Our third one was economics. We knew that the only way that we were going to improve community-wide is raise people up from the bottom to where they have an input into the community. And until you get at an economic level, your voice is not heard as well as someone that's at this level. So we knew we had to work on economics. But finally, education rose to the top. And we said, the only way we can help economically is to improve our educational system in Indianola. So we worked hard to bring these two things together, and I am real confident as we're working forward, we're going to make a change in our community through education and economics.